This workshop will be all about ACT. It stands for Scholastic Aptitude Test. It's very useful. It's widely used in mostly in U.S. universities and colleges um, as an entry exam. And most of universities these days have a test optional policy, but still a lot of students take this exam. Um, so to just give you some background and information about Utsa. Utsa is an international student at Berea College. She's from India and she's studying environmental science. And she's also a junior president of South Asian Dance Group on campus. Um, and Utsa first took the ACT in December 2021, and her score was 1350. Still impressive to me, I guess. And then she tried again in October 2022. In the second attempt, she improved her score to an impressive score of 1570. Um, and I think I can't try that even. And since then, she also mentored a lot of students who got as high scores as 1560, which is very impressive to me. So today we have Utsa, and she will talk about her journey, her test strategies, and everything she has learned along the way.
Hi, thank you for waiting for me. I am sorry that I was a little bit late. Okay, so there's just some basic things that we'll go over, which is what is it? It's a standardized test. Most people would submit it with like their academic transcript, like their scores in their exams, things like that. It has an English and a math section, and then colleges in the US have this exam, the SAT, and then also the ACT, which is quite commonly used as a standardized test. I'm not very familiar with the ACT at all, so don't think I'm a good person to ask questions about that, but I do. I have spent the past 2-3 years really thinking about the SAT and what kind of an exam is it and how can you do well on it. So, yeah, the rest of the points are kind of on the slide for you to see. You can go to the next one, Frida. Okay, so in the SAT, there's two main sections, the English section and the math section. The English section, there's two sections within that, which are each 32 minutes long. And within maths, there's two sections, 35 minutes long. And it's adaptive, which means that depending on your performance in the first section, you can the second section will change a little bit and be like it could be easier or harder compared to your first section depending on how you do on it. So this can feel a little intimidating, where it can actually also be useful, because ultimately every question on the SAT has the same weight. So if you have an easier section in the second part, like that may work to your advantage, but overall you want to try to minimize error and do well so that you can get the highest score possible. Oh yeah, and I wanted to add that a lot of people don't always realize when they prepare that when they go to write the exam, that they actually take a lot of time to tell you all these like rules and regulations about the SAT. And sometimes if you go in thinking that you're going to immediately write the exam, it can be very boring and stressful to sit down and hear all this information. So just know that on the test day, before you actually get into either of those sections, they'll sit down and tell you all these rules and expectations that they have for you in the exam. So know that there'll be some time for that as well. So prepare that you'll have to sit and wait and listen to a bunch of stuff before you actually write the exam. Okay. So in the reading and writing section, they test your comprehension. They test according to my classification, they test your comprehension, they test grammar and punctuation, and then they test vocabulary. So in comprehension questions, you'll usually have a passage, and then they'll ask you to identify the most important idea, or explain a part. I mean, identify something that like explains a certain part of it, or they might ask you to choose an example that explains the argument that's made. All of these kinds of questions are in some form of comprehension. Then you have grammar questions, which might be about punctuation, or they might be about using the right verb in relation to the sentence. And then you also have these vocabulary questions, which, in my opinion, I don't even know if they should be on the SAT because they're completely knowledge based, and you can't really, if you don't know the words, then you don't know the words. So these are the questions that I often try to save all my errors for, because those are the questions in which if I don't know, I really don't like have a way of um, figuring out how to answer the question. So um, I would suggest, as you work through the test, to write down words that you don't know and find their meaning. And it might be hard to remember all of them, but at least you know that you've seen it before, and you know that you spend some time to like Google the meaning and write it down. And hopefully, slowly as you study for the exam, you'll build up some of the vocabulary that you need. So it can be like, I would definitely pay attention to the vocabulary part, but also don't get too stressed about it, because there are all the other sections, and there's usually only like 5 or 6, maybe even fewer, maybe 3 to 4 vocabulary questions on every exam. Okay, so as far as tips go, it's really important that, unlike English in classrooms, you really want to think about SAT English more like match the following. So, so that means that in an English class, you might try to think about what the author means, and you might speculate, and everybody can have different ideas of what the text is, and they can all be valid and true. But then on the SAT, because it's a multiple choice exam, you need to have only one correct answer. And the only way for them to have only one correct objective answer is that they make it very, very literal. So they want you to look at exactly what's in the text and then associated with what's in the options. So, a good way to think about it is, if any part of an option is not explicitly something that is written in the text that you can read and understand from the text, then it's probably not correct. Um, and uh, and so, and a part of understanding the text well is that you want to understand what are all the different objects or subjects in the passage, and then you want to establish the correct relationships. So, for example, if there's a question about economics, and they say um, poverty is related to, um, let's say, income, and then also to um, like whether or not your degree in college, and then it'll ask you, it'll all this information will be in a like kind, it can feel like a really dense English paragraph where there's all these big words, and like I mean, it can be really hard to comprehend sometimes. But what you want to know is, if you have poverty, what is its relationship to the degree you get and your income? So is it a positive relationship? Is it a negative relationship? Um, those, like, understanding those things can be really, really important. In fact, it would maybe be really helpful to have an example here. So maybe we can come back to this at the end if we have time, and I can screen share an example so we can understand this better. Um, and then, so that's my advice for the comprehension questions. But then for grammar and punctuation, I haven't yet shared, but I will share a short list of the grammar and punctuation rules that I think you all should know. There are not that many. So as long as you know those and can apply those, that will help you with grammar questions. And then finally, it's yeah, and then elimination can be really helpful, because sometimes, like including in vocabulary questions or in general, you know that there is only one right answer. So there are three wrong answers. And if you can find those wrong answers and be really sure that those are wrong, even if you can't quite understand the right answer, that's a really good way to know that that is the right answer. So yeah, that elimination in general overall on the SAT can be really important to keep in mind. Okay, so let's go on to math. Um, in maths, they will test algebra, data analysis, geometry, and general problem solving. Um, there are two types of questions. You have multiple choice, and then there's also questions where you type out the entire answer, so you don't have any idea of what the options are for this question. Um, I think for math, it's people often find it less challenging because I think the English part of the SAT is more. I mean, I meant to say less challenging because the English part of the SAT I think can feel more foreign to a lot of people because they intentionally choose materials that I think you're more likely to have seen if you come from a certain socioeconomic background and things like that. And that can be really frustrating. But math is something that I think we understand regardless of what language we speak. And so so really lean into that. This can be a really helpful section, especially if English is not your first language and uh, first or second language, or if you're still building familiarity with English. So things that are good to keep in mind is, yeah, it can be good to have some mental math background so that you don't have to open the calculator and type, and those things can take some time. But also, since the calculator is there, feel free to use it, feel free to check your work. Like, I think that's also important because now in throughout the whole both sections of math you will have access to the calculator, which is different from how it used to be. um, it Another good thing to remember is that again they will give you some formulas like volume formulas and then trig ratios and things like that at the start of the exam, and you can always look at those if you forget, but it can be helpful to have these things handy in your mind so you can pull them out when you need it and use it. But overall, I would also encourage you to step away from a little bit from approaching questions in the same exact way as you have done in school, because sometimes the SAT will ask a question that can be solved in a simpler way then you need then without like, because in school you're again expected to write out all the steps, write out I mean, or I don't know how it is for you all, but for me I was expected to write down the equation and then what each thing is and then solve it, and the SAT really doesn't require any of these things because they just want the final answer. um, so the so it might be helpful actually to think about it um, differently, especially as you see the questions and start to familiarize yourself to think of what's the shortest way I can do this. Is there a way I can eliminate most of the answers and only solve a part of the question? Is there a simple, like sometimes the questions look really complicated, they might have a lot of parts, like it could be exponents, things like that. I have been many times been intimidated by math questions on the SAT, but something really important to know is that the questions are never harder than what is considered 10th grade math, and that all the questions on the SAT will only be a certain level of difficulty almost always. So trust that if you can do some or most of the questions, you can do the rest of them as well. And that questions that look hard can actually be easy if you look at what the question is asking, things of that nature. In terms of strategy, um, yeah, I think it can be wise to do easier questions first and go back to the harder ones, because unlike in an exam where you might have a 2 marker and a 5 marker, in the SAT every question has the same value. So if you don't want to be in a position where you have spent a lot of time on a really hard question and then you go ahead and there's an easy question that you know you could have done but you don't have the time for it. So that can be really important to keep in mind to maximize your score as much as possible. Okay, so this is again just more general information. The total score range on the SAT, it goes from 400 to 1600. I'm sure, I mean, if you're thinking of taking the exam, many of you may know these things. That reading and writing section can be from as low as, if you get everything wrong in the section, you get 200, and if you get everything correct, you get 800. Same for math. There is no negative marking. This is a really good thing about the SAT. So it's always really, really good to answer every question, even if you're not sure of the answer. And there are, I think if there's time at the end, and if somebody is interested, there are some good ways to guess on questions, which you please feel free to text and remind me if I forget to touch upon that again. But I'll make sure to include that. Um, and then, yeah, a good score can, yeah, it really depends on your target university. Like at Berea, SAT scores are actually not over, like average SAT scores are actually not that high. I think they're close to, Fida, I don't know if you have a better number on this, but they're somewhere between around 1200.
Yeah, around 1200. Yeah. Yeah, 1220, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can really depend. And it if thing with exams like this is that I just want all of you to know that this exam does not test how intelligent you are, that this exam does not test your ability to succeed in an academic environment, even though that's what it claims to do. It's just an exam, and there are many things about it that are difficult and problematic, but and like people have talked about how it's more disadvantageous to certain communities and things like that. So know all of this and don't associate your personal value and your ability to do well in academics with how you do in this exam, because it's timed. There, like if I believe that all of you, if you had a dictionary and enough time, can do all the English questions correctly on this exam. And so just know that this is not about your intelligence, but people use it, like universities use it, because it's like just another grade that you can show, like your GPA or your transcript. And so it's good to think about it like if you have a good grade and you have or a good or like a grade that you know you've worked for, and a good decent SAT score, then that's like your baseline. They know that you're good at academics. But people with lower SAT scores have gotten into top colleges and universities like Harvard, or like like all the like elite universities, all of these things based on what they're interested in, what work they do, what their volunteering opportunities have been like. So know that like US applications, even though they're crazy and random, do consider you as a whole person. And so don't let this bog you down too much, but it can give you a leg up to some extent in just like showing that you are able to do some about amount of rigorous academics. um, so yeah, so 1300. I think this is really accurate. I was talking about what's a good score, and yeah, I think looking at what the average score is in your university that you're trying to apply for and trying to get above that might be a good goal. But really, like, it's only one part of your application, and so make sure that you that you work hard on your essay, that you work hard on um, letting them know what kind of person you are, what you care about, what you are passionate about, and those things are just as important in your application. And yeah, they do a really useful thing now when you take an exam online, or even when you do a blue book test, that they'll tell you what your sub scores are in each section. So you can get an idea of what things you're understanding well and what things you maybe also need to improve on more. And that can be helpful in planning strategy for further practice and study. So you want to look at what things um, you keep getting wrong, and try to focus on those more. um, on that note, I well, maybe there's a section about that. Yeah, okay, we'll just go ahead. Okay, so SAT versus TOEFL, Duolingo, and IELTS. Most so at Berea specifically, you need to have, I think, at least one of these to talk about your English. I mean, to show them that you're proficient in English. Um, Overall, I think in many colleges, the SAT equivalent would be the ACT, which also tests English, math, and science. And TOEFL, Duolingo, and IELTS are more like English proficiency exams where you can demonstrate that you can speak and comprehend English as a language. So um, as the SAT is, I think, yeah, just a more comprehensive test in some ways, and I think I'm not very familiar with. I saw some questions earlier about scholarships and where all it's relevant, and I'm actually not the right person to ask this question because I've mostly worked with students who are applying to the US. Um, and needed for that, and it is important there, even though many colleges are becoming test optional. In an ideal world they wouldn't accept it at all because it's a bogus exam, but but we're not there yet, and there is still some importance and relevance given to it. So that, yeah, I would say is the importance and the difference between the SAT versus a language proficiency test, which just shows your ability, your comfortable, how comfortable you are with speaking English. Um, okay, this is just general tips and advice. Um, yeah, start early. I think this can be really important, especially because I mean, and I don't. I think 6 months is a long time, and the SAT can be. It can be really, I think it can feel really frustrating to study for it, because I think unlike um, a lot of exams in school, or unlike I mean, yeah, just like academic exams that we're used to, I think time is a really good indication. Like if you have spent time on it, it's quite likely that you will do well on it as well. But I think for the SAT, it's possible, and to keep studying for the exam and not realize what's not working. So I would highly encourage all of you that when you use this time, don't only try to just do a lot of questions. The more important thing, in my opinion, is that you need to, once you do the question, look at it and one, know for sure why your answer that you chose is the right answer. And if you didn't get the right answer, then why the answer that they're talking about is the right answer. And what I mean is that if you don't have clarity on exactly what went wrong in a question that you attempted or what your mistake was, it's very, very likely that you will make the same mistake again. And the SAT tries to make things harder for you and will like trick you or set you up in the same ways again and again. And if you don't realize that you made a mistake the first time, it's very possible that you will make the mistake a second time and a third time, and in your 6 months continue to make the same mistake. So I would say, like, in while studying for the SAT, depth can be really important in terms of making sure you really understand what didn't work. And another thing that I would keep in mind and that I do is kind of like, once you take the exam a few times and look at like what questions you're getting wrong, a part of the exam, yes, is like trying to solve the questions and knowing and like being able to understand the material. But a part of it is also, how do you know your own tendencies? Like how well do you know yourself as an exam taker or as a taker of the SAT, and writing down tips for yourself and reminders that you can look at um, to make sure that you don't make those same mistakes again. So if I do a question and I get it wrong, for example, something that I would always make mistakes on or silly mistakes on in math was anything that had negative signs. You know, like if it's in a bracket, you might forget to open it up. And so slowly I developed like a high alert. Every time I saw a negative sign in a question, I knew that I had to be very careful and that I needed to look and make sure that I opened the brackets correctly, that I didn't accidentally goof up something. So in that way, and these kinds of things can be different for everyone, because I'm sure some of you are laughing. You're like, how is she worried about these negative sides? Like everybody knows that. But I think you'll realize that as you do practice, you will tend to get certain types of questions wrong, and it's okay to know that. It's actually really really important to know that, so that you can actively work against your own like tendencies, or your own like ability, like yeah, to make those mistakes. And you want to keep those things to the front of your mind, so you can focus more on those things and make sure that you're not messing them up. Yeah, we can talk about where to do exercises in a little bit. Um, I'll talk a little bit more about study and prep tips, Frida. Something that also can be helpful, yeah, something that also can be helpful is um, do first practice untimed sections and make sure that you're able to understand everything fully, because sometimes in the stress of time you can't you're not giving yourself the opportunity to get to the right answer. Like I was saying in the beginning, if you had a dictionary and enough time, I think you can do all the questions on the English test well. So you want to give yourself the opportunity to try to do those first untimed, and then as you start to get in the groove of like knowing what do you need to see from the passage to answer the question, I think you'll get better at doing them in a timed way as well. um, when you practice timed sections, sorry, I feel like this is a lot of information, but I hope you're able to write this down, and hopefully you can also have access to this slideshow. When you do a timed section, I would really encourage you to practice them in the same unit that you find a section on the SAT. So like do a 32-minute English section with the same number of questions. Like you can even use the practice tests online to do this. And that can be really helpful because it'll accustom you to what it feels like to do a 32-minute English section. And so you can get used to the rhythm of that, like at what time should you be where in the section, and like if you're at a certain time, then do you want to go ahead and do the easy questions. Like you'll develop strategy a lot better if you practice timed questions in the same exact section that you find on the SAT. Um, Start early. Oh yeah, it can. So there's a lot of companies that make books for the SAT that are like that are I would suggest that you stay away from. So just use the official practice tests online on collegeboard.com, and then use Khan Academy, which is also a source for official SAT questions, because other questions can be misleading. They claim to be harder or more challenging, but actually they are testing you in a way that the SAT doesn't test you. So those questions are yeah, they can just be misleading because they're going to ask a different type of question than you will find on the SAT. Take full length mock tests. I would suggest, especially closer to your test date, doing a mock test every weekend, and then spending some time the week to work on that, and then coming back after a week studying and then doing another one. Or maybe in the beginning you can do them every 2 weeks. And I would also suggest doing it at the time on which you're going to go and take the exam. And so like try to stimulate the exam environment as much as possible. Um, so if your exam is at 9 a.m., sit down at 9 a.m. to do your mock exam as well. And all of these like things like doing the exam at a certain time will help your mind also get used to the process. Um, Something that I think it's easy to underemphasize is that the SAT is an exam that tests your ability to pay attention and look at details. And it's really, really, really important to try to sleep well, to give your body rest, to eat well, and as much as possible to look after yourself and have a very ideal like time and sleeping schedule, especially closer to the exam, so that when you wake up, you are alert, you're awake, and especially before the exam, I mean, I couldn't sleep. I think when I gave my exam, not that well, but you really want to be in a practice of getting good rest if it's possible, so that you can be really alert, because your alertness and your attention is probably the most important thing that you have on the SAT. Okay, I think I'm good here. Okay, common mistakes. Yeah, I not timing yourself when you practice full length mock tests, or if you're doing timed sections. Yeah, I think you should try to keep an eye on time, maybe keep a watch on the side. They allow those, so you can get familiar with the pattern of the test and how long it takes and how your mind works in those 32 minutes. Are you sleepier towards the end? Are you sleepier in the beginning but you wake up as you do it? All of these things, like knowing yourself as you take the exam, is really important. Wasting time on hard questions. Yeah, totally. You don't want to do this. Every question is the same. Every question gives you the same amount of points. So you want to do, you never want to be in a place where you have done all the, you wasted time on a hard question and then you have easy questions that you could have done. Um, Something else is not reviewing with a fresh mind, which I mean that when you go back to a question to check it, it can be easy. I mean, and sometimes you do want to trust yourself about how you thought about it before, and that can be helpful. But mostly, if you're checking, you want to doubt yourself completely. You don't want to trust the person who did this question 30 minutes ago or an hour ago, and you want to look at it with a completely fresh mind, and this will help you catch mistakes, um, because you're not assuming at all that you did it correctly. You're thinking about it completely fresh. um, you don't want to be memorizing things. The SAT doesn't really test memorization. In fact, that's why they also give you formulas and certain things in the exam that you can use, because they don't want you to remember. They want you to apply the concepts, and everything that you need to know about the question. In math, it's a little different. In English, it'll definitely all be in the question, but in math too, like, think more about the concepts. Don't try to, I would caution you from trying to apply the same methods that you use in class on the SAT math questions. um, Skipping reading practice. I mean, yeah, the 800, half of the points for the exam are in the English section. So you want to get as many of those as possible. So, but if you are good at maths, I would really encourage you to figure out how to get as high a score as possible in math, because it'll help. It'll give you a leg up if you're getting like above 700 in math. I would really push you to see how you can get that to 800, because that's 100 points that then you can have secured in your test, or even from 700 to 750, like 750 to, yeah. Because at the very end, it's only going to be about a few questions, because the difference from 700 to 750 may be like 6 or 8 questions, but the difference from 750 to 800 is going to be just 3 or 4 questions, because the SAT curves, and it's different for every exam. It's really frustrating, but every question does not have the same weightage. So there are some, in that way, like every question has points, and getting the same number of questions right across will give you the same score. But the difference between the really high scores is much fewer questions, especially since they've made the exam shorter than it used to be. And so it's those last 3 or 4 questions that will really push you into getting a really, really high score. Um, yeah, and then I think this is really, really important. Thinking that the test is ambiguous, meaning that it is vague, or that there are more than one right answer, or like things like that. It's not. Just trust on every question that you do, if that there is only one correct answer, and if you are not able to identify it, then you might be missing something, or maybe there's a word you don't know, or maybe you've made a an error or a mistake. So just really trust that there is always just one correct answer, and you are capable of finding it. Okay, we can move on. Yeah, somebody was asking about what are sites or apps that you can do exercises. You can definitely do it on Khan Academy. They have an SAT section. They organize. I don't love how they organize their questions, but it's a good question bank that you can use. And um, definitely all the College Board practice tests that they have on their website. Um, I'm not familiar with these YouTube channels, but I'm sure FIDA maybe has some faith in them, and I'm sure that they will also be helpful. And then, yeah, there's amazing resources that I'm sure FIDA and team have worked on that you will have access to. And I will share with FIDA my personal compiled tips paper that you can look at. But really, I think I would use that less as like a guide and more as like a format to think about how you might write your own tips um, for improving. And I will also share a quick list of grammar and punctuation rules so that you can know the ones that are important on the SAT. And those will come to you. Yeah, now we have time for questions. And I'm happy to take them. And I know we only have 10 minutes. But
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Utsa. I think the information was really helpful for someone who is preparing or planning to take the SAT. Yeah, once again, so regarding the resources, we do have a channel, specific channel for our SAT resources on our Discord. So make sure you check that, and the resources that Utsa will share with me, I will put in there that you can access all of them. And we already have a lot of resources there too. So yeah, and now if you have any questions, you can raise your hands in the emails listed on the slides. Also, Utsa, if you want to contact Utsa, you can contact her through her email. And if you want to contact us, you can use the email on this slide. Yeah. So we have a question from Aqila Mohammadi.
Hello and greetings. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for holding such a great session tonight. And I've learned so many things. Thank you. I have a question and confused my mind was that as you pause the taste, could you please tell us about your experience and much more importantly about the math section because I'm a little bit weak at that. And for being very great at the math section, which topic or which type of mathematics should I study, and which question was much more repetitive, and was a lot of that question in the math section. I was confused about that and how to strengthen my math knowledge. And I've also get some classes in Khan Academy and took some stat preparation classes. But even though when there is a much more complex question, I cannot figure that out. Could you please help me with that?
yeah, I think for math, Khan Academy, I hear you that you took some classes. Um, I think a good way to do it might be to find the topic that you are struggling with or that is hard for you, and then definitely you can look at the explanations that are within that topic. Like they usually have teaching videos, but a good way to get a better concepts or a conceptual understanding, it might help to go check out Khan Academy's like math videos on that specific section. So like they have videos on algebra, they have videos on like very specific topics. And so if there's something that you're not quite understanding and you're able to see, oh, like this is a question I never know how to do, their videos are really helpful because they'll start from the very basic things that you need to understand about a concept, and then they'll add complications. And their teachers, and especially like all the videos that are made by Sal Khan, who is the founder, I think are really, really good explanations. And they will never they'll tell you about, like often when we're taught math, they're like, oh, this is just a rule, or this is just something you have to follow. He really will explain where those rules come from, and will never make you just do something like based on a rule or an assumption or like a pattern. So I think that can be really helpful in improving conceptual understanding. As for what types of questions, I don't know that there is. I mean, there might be somebody who has done like a like statistical analysis, as in like to see which are the most common questions that keep coming back. I think they vary pretty well between topics, and so I don't know if it would be very helpful, because I think even if there is a question that appears a lot, it's not going to be enough to like just study that question and be able to do it. You really want to see how you can apply your understanding of one question to more questions. And so more than just like trying to memorize the approach you took, like what kinds of things should you think to answer that question? I know this sounds kind of vague and maybe not very helpful, but I think that if you a really good teaching resource is the videos that they have on Khan Academy about math concepts that are even outside the SAT section. And I think it would be worthwhile to explore those. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you for the question. That's a really real struggle.
Yeah. And I think we have one more question from Seema Hamadi. Seema.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, hello, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm so happy to have the chance to talk to someone who has already experienced what we have planned for our future. My question is that I have been stuck for a while in the number of 1,350. Actually, I'm trying to improve, but every time that I give the mock test, there is not even a slight change. I wanted to ask if there is any way that I can improve my number, my score. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is like what I was describing earlier, where you can like keep studying and it doesn't change. I think if you are able to, I spent as much time taking the test as I did. Or maybe maybe it's like 2 hours to take the test, but then it is I would say 2 to 3 hours, maybe even longer, when you review the test to really make sure like you're able to understand what's not working out. So when you review, look at what questions you got wrong, and then look at why your answer was wrong. What did you think? And so like something that is really important for the SAT is this is knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know. And once you get better at knowing what you know and what you don't know, you will be able to look at how you can, if you don't know something in a question, you'll know that you don't know that. And then you can try to figure out around that, or by like knowing that this part is something you don't understand. So you're less likely, I think, to assume or to think that you understand and like choose the wrong option because you misunderstood the question. Other than that, yeah, I think like like I said, like familiarizing yourself with your tendencies, like what are you getting wrong, what are the things you don't know and you need to learn. I think that's the best way to improve, instead of just taking mock tests. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I think that was the last question. Thank you so much, Utsa, for answering the questions, and I think the information was very helpful. Um, and uh, and I'm sure we learned a lot from the information, and those who are planning to take the ACT. Yeah, I mean, we're always available. I mean, you can always reach out to us, the resources and everything. And you can reach out to Utsa through her email. And yeah, I think we are right on time. I want to thank you, Utsa, for coming today and dedicating your time. Uh, and yeah, thank you so much for this. And thank you all for joining us today. Uh, and it's always our pleasure to help you and see you grow and learn in our community at ASA. And make sure you reach out to us if you have any questions or anything. Our resources are available on our Discord. Again, we are looking forward to providing more workshops like this for you all, so that you can come in and learn more and grow academically. And once again, thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you, Utsa. And if you have any final thought.
I'm really glad that I was able to do this workshop for all of you, and thank you so much for all your time and attention, and good luck. And I hope that this exam doesn't feel like a barrier in the rest of your journey and feels like something that you can do. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for coming today. And thank you all, and have a great night, have a great morning, have a great afternoon, wherever you are. Yeah. And yeah, till we see again. Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Thank you all.
Yeah.